Thank you. Welcome to this Zoom meeting of the Wingecarribee Independent Advisory Planning Assessment Panel on the 1st of July 2021. I declare the meeting open. My name is Julie Walsh and I'm the chair of today's panel. I'll shortly introduce the other panel members, but I have a few administrative matters to run through first. I'll start with technical matters. If everyone can please place themselves on mute unless they are speaking. And if there are any technical difficulties for any of the speakers, we may move to the next speaker if we can't resolve it promptly, and a council officer will phone on the number that has been provided, and you might have to just dial in on the phone. And I'd ask everyone to be patient because it's obviously a Zoom meeting and technical difficulties can occur. I'd next like to do the acknowledgement of country. Wingecarribee Shire Council acknowledges the Gundungurra and Tharawal people as the traditional custodians of this land we now call the Wingecarribee Shire. I pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging, and I would also like to extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders present here today. I note that this meeting, apart from the closed deliberative session, is being live streamed to the council website and recorded. There are no apologies. Declarations of interest. There are no declarations of interest apart from expert member Larissa Ozog in respect of items 6.1 and 6.2. That might be 5.1 and 5.2, but it's in respect of both items. I'm not sure about the item numbering. Larissa has declared a less than significant non-pecuniary interest as she's an expert member of the Wollongong Local Planning Panel, as is consultant Scott Lee, who represents more than one landowner. She's never worked in a professional capacity with Mr. Lee and has no personal relationship with him. And in those circumstances, I have determined that she may participate in the determination and voting of those items. The procedure for the meeting, the council website contains a copy of the operational guidelines for the panel meetings. They're slightly modified today as it's a Zoom meeting, but I'll summarise the important points. All panel members have read the business papers and received a detailed briefing from council officers, which has included visual aids, including Google Maps, given that due to the COVID-19 health orders, it has not been possible to carry out site inspections. The panel members have also been provided with copies of written submissions. The panel is charged today with providing advice to the council. It does not have a determinative role. We'll hear from registered speakers in the order in which I have a list. I don't know if that list can be brought up on the screen or not. Michelle?
Sorry, Julie, I was on the phone. What list were you after?
The list of speakers. Are you able to bring it up on the screen yet?
Sure, just give me 5 seconds. Minimize it. Okay.
Thank you. So I think there are 17 speakers, if I've added them up right. So I propose to take them in the order on which they appear on that list. As I indicated before, if there are technical difficulties in someone connecting up to us, we may move to the next speaker and come back to them. I noticed that there are some speakers who are speaking on multiple matters. So there will be a time limit today on the speakers of 3 minutes per presentation. And in addition, there may be questions. I do have discretion to extend that. I'm normally quite relaxed about that, but I propose to be a little stricter today. So I've asked one of the council officers to actually time the 3 minutes. And if you're mid-sentence, I'll just ask you to wrap it up. As I said, at the end of your presentation, there may be questions by the panel members. And at the end of all the presentations, I'll ask the relevant council officers just to respond as they see appropriate. Once a speaker has spoken, they'll not be permitted to speak again unless it is in response to a question by the chair or another panel member. When we've heard from all speakers, we'll move into closed session to deliberate, and we'll return to the public meeting to announce our decisions, and that will be live streamed. And the minutes of the meeting, we'll aim to place those on the council website within 2 business days. In respect of the presentations, it's obviously a matter for you, what you want to say and how you want to say it. I noticed that there are some PowerPoint presentations. From my point of view, given that you've already made a primary written submission, the thing that I'm most interested in is, obviously most of you are disagreeing with what the council officers have recommended, so I'm interested in your reasoning for disagreeing with them. That would be of most interest to me. So I'm now going to introduce the panel members to you. The panel comprises 3 independent experts, including myself and 1 community member. I'm a solicitor with over 35 years experience in local government planning and environmental law. I acted principally for councils, but also did do work for individuals and corporates. Most of my career has been spent in the Land and Environment Court, and I currently sit on 3 planning panels as a chair or alternate chair in the Sydney metropolitan area, and I've done that for the last 3.5 years. So Larissa Ozog, would you mind introducing yourself?
Good morning. My name's Larissa Ozog. I'm a qualified town planner. Over 20 years experience in local government, predominantly in the eastern suburbs of Sydney, is where most of my experience comes from. However, I've also worked at the Department of Planning. I've worked in private practice, and I currently sit on a couple of local planning panels and do work for the department at the moment in a contract position, as well as Georges River Council. So I do have a fair bit of diverse experience.
Sorry about that. Linda Kelly, you could introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Linda Kelly. I'm a practicing planner. Like Julie, I have well over 30 years experience working mainly in local government. I've worked across a number of councils in Sydney metropolitan area, both in development assessment and strategic planning. And I currently work as a lecturer at Macquarie University in their planning program.
Thank you. And Bill Davison? Are you there, Bill?
Yeah, sorry. I'm the resident here of Bowral, and I've lived here for 15 years. I'm a civil engineer, and over my working life, I was a city and a shire engineer, both in Sydney and right up to the Queensland border. I've been involved very much in development and new subdivisions and so on during that period, provision of all of the services to those subdivisions. So I'm very interested to see how things progress here in the Windsor-Carriby Shire Council.
Thank you. So if we could now move to the first speaker, who is Angus Dawson, speaking on the Bowral South proposed Greenfields new release area. And I think that's dealt with at page 57 of the council report, if any of the panel members wanted to see where that is. So let's see if we can get Mr. Dawson on the line. Don't forget to take yourself off mute.
Good morning. Have you got me?
Yes, excellent.
Now I've beautifully lost my notes because the screen's just covered it for me. Hang on, there we go. That's better. Now I believe I'm speaking with Sophie Perry or back to back. Have we got 6 minutes or 3 between the 2 of us?
Oh, I'll give you 3 each. Yes.
Thank
Excellent.
you. Well, I'll start then. And thank you very much for allowing us the opportunity to address you. We're speaking on behalf of the housing strategy as a whole, and also in particular on the Bowral South New Living Area. I should declare from the outset that both I and Cardno are engaged by the Tyree family, who own a large parcel of land in the Bowral South area. In any event, we support the housing strategy, and I do that not just on behalf of the Tyrees, but also as a practitioner in the industry. The strategy is a long-term plan for housing in the Shire and defines where it will grow. And in the development industry, that's a difficult thing to come across. And I think more importantly for communities, that's a difficult thing to come across in their Shire where land will grow. So this allows the orderly planning and the proper use of infrastructure and the planning for infrastructure by council. The analysis is very objective, which is a good thing to see in this area. And I think this housing strategy takes us away from the current LEP, which has relied on infill development for growth. And it hasn't provided the growth since the LEP was made, simply because the land economics doesn't work. The large form houses in the area are more valuable as they are than they would be as medium density or anything else. In particular in Bowral South, the housing strategy and the new release area recognises a natural extension of the Bowral-Burradoo township to the river. It's not encroaching on the green in between, in my view, but it's a natural extension down to the river, and it gives opportunity to give the community access to the river and access to public open space that would be in the floodplain of the river. It's also very close, obviously, to existing services and other things. There's also the opportunity to provide another key link in the bike path and walk path that council have intended to have circumnavigate the whole city. And there's an opportunity too for a neighbourhood centre which wouldn't take away from the township of Burradoo or the town centre of Burradoo, but would service those people in East Bowral and in the Burradoo area. The other thing is that modern development, obviously with the constraints on modern development, it will improve flow and water quality because we simply have to do that if we're going to develop the land. And the land itself is probably now too high in value for viable agriculture, and we can talk about that a little bit later if we'd like to. And also there's opportunity to open up vistas, I think, to the south and across the thing, vistas that are not yet available from Merridge Park Road. So a quick summary to not take up too much of Sophie's time. We're supporting the housing strategy because it's objective and evidence-based, and it's a good way of planning. There is the opportunity in the planning to deliver good urban design and character through urban design guidelines in this kind of development. It opens access to the river for the community with open space.
That's
improve flood management. And we
maybe just finish up. Thanks. Yeah,
that's all right. I was on my last point, and on the last point, I think the landowners in this area are already working with council to come up with the most appropriate outcomes. That's me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Perry. Did you need to speak? Do you think?
Yes, thanks. Just a quick one. Angus has said most of the most important points, which is great. But one thing that's not clear in the housing strategy, and it doesn't necessarily need to be, but we actually know from hindsight that the population projections from the 2013-15 housing strategy actually underestimated population growth by about 6% per annum. So as we currently stand today, that means we've actually got a deficit of about 2,000 dwellings. So this site, South Bowral in particular, represents a really good opportunity to claw some of that lack of supply back. We've got a really good coordinated and enthusiastic group of landowners, which is a little bit rare sometimes, and a really good site with minimal constraints compared to some of the other sites identified. And we're actually got quite a good commitment to a comprehensive site-specific DCP and a servicing strategy. So this site in particular, even though the housing strategy recommends greenfield sites are medium to long-term supply, this site is quite well geared up to be a short to medium term supply site. So that was basically the point that I wanted to make to the panel today.
Thank you. I'll just ask any of the panel members if they have any questions. Linda, did you have any questions?
No, thank you, Julie. I'm fine.
Larissa?
Yes. I might just one question because, and I might just need a bit of clarity also from Michael if he's around. Michael, understand this is the site where you've just dedicated a portion for development. Is that correct? The whole site's an investigation, but is only part of the top part near the northern side to be allocated for development. Is that correct, or can you just clarify that for me?
Yeah, to clarify that. No, you're thinking of the site on Mittagong East. So this is the site south of Barrow. So this is the largest living area identified through the strategy, and all of the unconstrained land, so everything except for the flood-prone land within the investigation area is identified as a new living area.
Okay. Yep. Great. Thank you very much. Yep. So that's fine.
It's page 56 of the council officer's report if you wanted to follow it.
I do have that one. Yes.
So, Mr. Davison, did you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dawson and Ms. Perry.
Thank you.
I'm very pleased that we were able to start with a technical victory.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one question. Is this being live streamed? Because I can't seem to bring it up.
I'm told it's being live streamed. I'm not in charge of that, I'm afraid.
Might be my technological problem. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, so the next speaker is Mr. Lee on 542 Kangaloo Road, Glen Quarry. That's site number 10, and in the council officer's report, it's page 29. I just want to double check that. I'm told it's being live streamed. I'm not in charge of that, I'm afraid.
Might be my technological problem. Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, so the next speaker is Mr. Lee on 542 Kangaloo Road, Glen Quarry. That's
Mr. Lee, you might want to stop the live stream in the background, I think.
Yeah, I'm just doing that now.
The good thing is we know it's now being live streamed.
Someone's taken my screen over.
Okay, so the next speaker is Mr. Lee on 542
Mr. Lee, you might want to stop the live stream in the background, I think.
Yeah, someone's taken my screen. If you can hear me, I'm trying to. Yeah, I'm just doing that now. I'm trying to.
The good thing is we know it's now being live streamed.
I'm happy to get off if I can. Someone's taken my screen over. Yeah, someone's taken my screen. If you can hear me, I'm trying to. Yeah, I'm just doing that now. Trying to.
I'm wondering whether we should move to the next item. What do you think? Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah, we can hear. Yeah, I think let's move to the next item.
Yeah, I think just for the sake of moving it along, so we can come back to Mr. Lee. Just seeing. Oh no, he's only speaking on the one item. Okay, so the next item is Milo Kelly, 30 Headlam Road, Mossvale. Are you there, Milo Kelly? Are you taking yourself off mute? I can see you.
Is that me, sorry?
Oh yes, that's you. Yeah, we were going to hear from Scott Lee, but he had some technical difficulties, so we've just moved across to you.
No worries.
Yeah, so this is in respect of 30 Headlam Road.
Yep.
Yes, you've got 3 minutes.
No worries. Thanks, Julie. My name's Milo Kelly from Cardno, presenting on behalf of the landowner of 30 Headlam Road. The landowner's identified an opportunity for a little amount of development at the site. which is a historic family farm known as Fairview. It was named that way because of its good access to the river, including Bong Bong Weir, and it also contains the old Moss Vale pump house. Next slide, if you like. The site's got a few constraints which have influenced this proposal, including all the flooding constraints you can see, particularly in the low-lying areas, but the southwestern raised area is relatively unconstrained. This lends those low-lying portions to recreational or environmental uses, which we'll get onto in a moment. There's also a set of power lines crossing the site. We've had some initial discussions with Endeavour Energy who confirmed these could be relocated underground at a pretty reasonable cost in the context of the works. Next slide, thanks. So Cardno and the landowner have prepared a concept level master plan for the site, which would consist of large lot residential in that raised section with, that slide, with a minimum lot size of 2,000 square metres. The rest of it would be committed to recreational environmental uses for public benefit, things like opening up the waterfront for public parkland, with some opportunities for linkages with the surrounding parklands like Cecil Hoskins Reserve across the river. Could have restoration of the creek line running through the site, which is currently really degraded because of its historic use as pasture. There could be restoration and reuse of the pump house as a community facility. And also importantly, we think creation of some sort of entry statement for Moss Vale in front of the substation, which sort of dominates that entrance. Next slide, thanks. So probably instead of going through all these public benefits, which are probably pretty self-evident, might just respond to some of Council's comments in their proposal, to the proposal in the report. They've been concerned that there's not enough feasibility done on the flood-affected land, but given the very limited and low-density residential footprint being proposed, we think this is appropriate for the stage. The existing modelling shows only a very low level of flood risk up the hill under PMF conditions. We think this is very workable given our previous experience doing residential development in flood-prone areas, especially because of natural drainage of the land towards the creek. The cost of achieving all of the public benefits is also noted, but these will be done based on Council's priority. We don't think this is a very good reason to forgo all of these opportunities. The landowner, as well as a lifelong resident of the site and the area, isn't really interested in skinning it for all it's worth. They're planning to live there among that residential area in their family home, and they want to see it done right, despite the cost. It's noted that the housing targets too are being met elsewhere in the housing strategy, but there's a benefit to meeting them in a diversity of locations, especially where it's already well integrated with existing towns and services, like this one would be. So just to conclude, I guess obviously housing development has a lot of trade-offs, and that's why we're here. But in this case, the trade-offs are very minor because it only consists of a very small amount of low density residential area, which is well integrated with the existing town. And in return, there's many opportunities for opening up the historic and environmental assets on site to the public. The river especially is very central to the identity of the region, and it's important not to miss chances to make this accessible to the public, especially for Moss Vale, which doesn't currently have a lot of waterfront land accessible by walking or cycling. Because of its small size and the range of public benefits possible, we don't think this would set a bad precedent for Council, and we think it's a very worthy proposal that would benefit from inclusion in the housing strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Linda, no relation. Do you have any questions?
Thanks, Milo. I do have not so much a question, but just wanted to afford you the opportunity to elaborate on something.
Yep, sure.
The planning officer's report states quite clearly, as you said, that they think it's unlikely that the costs involved with the power lines, etc., would result in a public benefit because it's so costly to do those other things. And you made the comment that you don't think that's a very good reason for not proceeding. I wondered if you wanted to elaborate on that.
Well, only in the sense that it's totally undeveloped land, which could be, given to the public in any kind of configuration council wanted, whether they just wanted to use part of that as community and, I don't know, preserve the back if it was considered unfeasible to develop or to restore all of the creek line right away. It's really up to council's priority, what the social benefits they see, which ones would be focused on in the short to medium term. But ultimately, there's a lot of opportunities there. And yeah, we don't think there'd be any harm in it, really, compared to the opportunities.
Larissa, did you have any questions?
No, no questions. Thank you.
Bill Davison?
No questions, no.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Kelly. So we might just go back and see if Scott Lee is able to connect this time. Scott.
Hello. Good morning.
Hi, good.
Sorry about that.
Oh, look, it happens to all of us. So you're going to speak about 34 Suttle Road, Mossvale. Yes.
Oh, is that the one? Okay.
Oh, that's what's on my list.
Sorry, there was two that I had. I'm happy to speak to that, of course.
Oh, okay. Well, let's do that one first because that's the one I've got. And then if you've got another one, I can just...
It's another one in relation to Barrel South.
Oh, Barrel South.
Yes.
The one that was just dealt with by...
It was a specific one, Chair, in relation to, I think it's in the first part of the council report.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. So, yeah, just fire away on
Sutter Road.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Just very quickly, in relation to why I suppose, as you said in the opening remarks, reasons for disagreeing with the council recommendation. We simply believe that this land has been already residentially zoned, can easily be serviced. It represents a reasonable infill development opportunity, which is exactly what the council needs in addition to other larger greenfield sites. Contrary to what the council report says, I would take issue with the fact that it's being designated as flood-prone land. It has a minor localised stormwater inundation problem in, I think it's the northeast corner along Sutter Road, which with some development of the land for some modest residential development would be readily rectified. It's not a constraint to developing the land. The council's, I suppose, position is really reliant upon or based on its concern that it's incompatible with the adjoining industrial neighbours. I would say that as its residential land has no characteristics of the R5 land, but has capacity for some modest infill development. And those concerns of councils about future relationships between residential and adjoining industrial development shouldn't be the determining factor in whether or not this makes a reasonable infill residential opportunity. So we think it's got some merit. We think it's the sort of small-scale infill development that can add to the total or availability of land, and very, I suppose, important as well in terms of affordability. There needs to be a range of opportunities across the Shire, and this one would certainly offer some more residential land at a lower price point, and that's an absolutely critical factor for the Shire. It's well recognised that housing prices in the Shire are extremely high, land values are extremely high. So any small opportunity that can be taken should be looked at, and we think that in due course through appropriate subdivision design, which we have put to council for larger lots around the perimeter of smaller lots more centrally located, we think it's imperative that the council takes these opportunities rather than not. And that's why I would disagree with council's recommendation in the report.
Okay, thank you. Linda, did you have any questions?
No, I have no questions. Thank you, Julie.
Larissa?
No, no questions.
Bill?
No questions.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Lee. So, Mr. Lee, you said you had another one you wanted to speak on. Do you want to do that now while we've got you?
Look, I'm happy if you are. Thank you very much. That was
so that's in relation to Bowral South. So did you hear Mr. Dawson and Ms. Perry speak on that? I
did. Yes. My task this morning was to speak directly to, I think it is in landowner site number 10 in the first portion of council's report. It's a parcel of land that is contiguous with the rest of the identified living area for Bowral South. So that's on page 31.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Oh, so this is a landowner nominated
That's
one.
a landowner nominated one, yeah, if I may.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just for the record, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, but I just wanted to raise a slight concern about the decision of this nature being made perhaps without the opportunity for a proper site visit. Now, obviously, the situation at the moment is difficult. I acknowledge that, but I am concerned that perhaps some of the issues there would be assisted by the panel having been able to visit the site. Having said that, again, why I disagree with council's position on this one and why we believe it should be included into the new living area, certainly at this point in time, is that clearly it's contiguous with the other land in the Bowral South area. It's within the same ownership, and as the other speakers have said, that's extremely important in getting good long-term strategic planning and servicing strategies. As Angus and Sophie said, who are representing landowner in the western part of this broader area, I'm representing landowners in the eastern part of this. And this piece of land is within common ownership of other land within the Bowral South area. In that sense, it's a small addition to the overall living area, and it's not a fundamental change of direction of council to include this land at this point in time. It has the same characteristics as the rest of the living area. It's on the that northern side of the river. It's bounded by the river. It's got no different constraints. The council's report raises some concern around flooding. We don't think that is a particularly significant, or again, should be the determining factor in whether or not this is in or out of the future living area at the moment. There's good information around flooding, and there's a flood study or a revised flood study to be exhibited shortly. So all those issues can be managed quite effectively. It allows for the better coordination and assessment of planning of the whole of the precinct. It certainly adds to the significant public benefit of having the riverfront land, which is, shouldn't be understated in this whole of Bowral South area. That the value of that opportunity is immense to the local community. You only have to see the popularity of the shared cycleway around the river on the Burradoo side that's been in place now for 20 odd years. It's massively important to the public benefit of this new living area, and this land adds significantly to it. The inclusion in the strategy also at this point in time doesn't rezone the land. It simply would allow, that still needs to be justified fully through the planning proposal process. Its inclusion now simply allows the orderly planning of it, the better planning for infrastructure and servicing strategies, which work is being undertaken now, as Sophie and Angus had mentioned before. So I don't see a particular any downside to including this, but certainly there are potential upsides, and in the fullness of the planning process, the merits of it as to what zoning ends up being the most appropriate, that can be fully explored. It's just, to me, it's just a lost opportunity if it's not included now. And I strongly recommend that the panel considers including it into the new living area to allow a coordinated approach to the land at the appropriate time, which is right now while the rest of the precinct is being investigated. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lee. Linda, did you have any questions?
Yes, just one question. Thank you, Julie. Thanks, Scott. I just wondered if you had any thoughts about the council identifying the Bong Bong Raceway as the eastern boundary of Bowral.
Yes, I do. Yeah, I do. And I agree with that. I think I've always thought that was a logical sort of conclusion, if you like. With one of the benefits that this this area is that it can be well prescribed or described as well. I mean, in terms of a boundary, the river provides a very strong natural limitation to the growth, and that this fits in with that. This land sits immediately to the south of the race course, not necessarily to the east, and the topography of the land is such on the approach from the east that you don't notice this land until you're actually getting views across the race course and more in a westerly direction across the rest of the release area. So I don't. If council's concern was that it was encroaching east of the race course and therefore extending the town boundary in that fashion, I wouldn't agree, because I don't think that's the case. I think it goes to the south of the race course. It's still well contained by the river. That's a natural boundary, and your entrance to the town along Kangaloon Road will not be affected by the inclusion of this land. You will still reach the urban boundary when you get to the race course. That's what I would suggest.
Thank you.
Any more questions, Linda?
No, thank you.
Larissa, did you have any questions?
No, no questions.
Bill?
No, Julie, no questions. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So is that for you, Mr. Lee?
I think they're the only two,
Yeah.
Chair, that I had registered to speak to.
Thank you. All right. So the next item, the next speaker is, thank you, is Michael Brown. Are you there? Hello. So, Mr. Brown, you're speaking on Darrabee Lodge, Mossvale. I had you there a minute ago. Okay, it looks like there's a technical problem there, so we might move on and come back to Mr. Brown. The next speaker I have is speaking on, there's three items. Nigel McAndrew, are you there, Nigel? Hi, Nigel.
Yes, hello, Julie.
Oh, thank you. So I've got you down to speak on 3 items. 38 Yarrawa Road, Mossvale. Problem there. So we might
Sorry, bear with me a second.
and come back to Mr. Brown.
Sorry, what was that, Julie?
So have you turned that off now?
Yes, I have. Sorry.
Okay, thanks. So I've got you down for 3 items. 38 Yarrawa Road, Mossvale.
Correct.
181 Drapers Road, Colovale.
Correct.
And 1530 Wilson Drive, Colovale. Thank you. So perhaps if you speak in that order, that'll make it easier for me. So if we start with 38 Yarrawa Road, Mossvale.
Sure. Okay. No, I haven't used. Hopefully, you should be able to see my screen shortly.
Oh yes, we can see that. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much for the opportunity to present to the panel today. Yeah, I'm principal of design and planning at an urban design firm that works throughout New South Wales. I've got about 30 years of experience in Australia, throughout a number of the states in Australia as well as the UK. I just wanted to outline and sort of reinforce what Sophie Perry had said earlier in terms of the statistics relating to the local housing strategy, in particular the population that we're looking at. I notice on Profile ID that in actual fact, Wingecarribee has hit 51,760 people in June of 2020, which is what was forecast within the strategies to be met by 2041. So a growth rate of 0.2%. When in actual fact, we're seeing that that's tenfold increase to 2%. So when we start looking at what that means in projecting forward, the housing strategies need, or the local housing strategy and the local strategic planning statement, in actual fact, need to be looking at a threefold increase in housing accommodation. So hence putting that forward is that each of the landowner nominations become quite critical in terms of being able to actually meet that supply. So just moving to Yarrowa Road, this is a submission being made on behalf of Vivacity. They're a developer who operate with lifestyle villages for over 55s. So they work on a land lease arrangement. So I'm not sure whether you're familiar with that, but basically the land is retained and the houses, in this case, are custom built and built on site for retirees, obviously. The site that they're looking at is on Yarrowa Road, number 38, as you know, 40 hectares in size, approximately 20 hectares of that is developable. The site is obviously quite close to the Chelsea Comanche site on the eastern side of Yarrowa Road, but is only 2.5 kilometres from the actual Mossvale town centre and the railway station. So, and also has easy access to the Canberra and the Hume Highway. The site is predominantly cleared of vegetation, and if you can hopefully see this photo on the left-hand side, because I'm aware that the panel members may not be familiar or as intimately familiar with the local authority as others are, if you can see that photo, and hopefully you can, that's the site of what you see as you enter into Mossvale on Yarrowa Road. You know, a mismatched line of fences, back fences, side fences of properties that that form part of the town centre, so, or the town proper, I should say. Not a very welcoming, and not a very, from a tourist perspective, not a very welcoming entrance into to Mossvale from the south, particularly when entering from Bundanoon or from areas to the south of that. So the opportunity, in my mind, from an urban design perspective, is actually to improve that interface and have it a lot more welcoming than mismatched colour bond and other styles of fencing. So the proposal, very broad, is that the development, so plan on the right-hand side, development happening on this right-hand side, the sort of eastern end of the site, entry into community facilities, a lake at the back, and the retention of the back part of the property as E3. There's a need for the proposal. The proportion of elderly population is increasing, which is obviously indicated by the local housing strategy. There's an undersupply of this sort of affordable seniors housing. It provides an opportunity for locals to age in place. And it's also obviously, as I said, adjacent to the Chelsea Gardens Ashbourne development, but that development's not going to be providing for seniors housing in the way that this specifically does. So, you know, there is a shortage appreciated within the local authority for seniors housing, and here's an opportunity to address that. Obviously, there would be the need for a rezoning to occur to enable this to happen, but as Scott Lee pointed out, at this point in time, all we're doing is identifying it as a living area. It needs to go through a rezoning process, and obviously would require also some specific DCP aspects relating to the site. One consideration, and a major consideration, is traffic for Mossvale, as we're all aware as locals. The thing about this sort of development is that it is a low traffic volume type of development. Private bus operators are able to trip residents around, and therefore not a large impact on the local road network. And then there's also obviously you know, any implications of this could be dealt with through VPAs or a voluntary planning agreement as part of contributions.
That's 3 minutes.
Okay, well, just the last slide sort of obviously relates to more to the things that would need to be considered as part of rezoning the site, which we'd see as the next phase. So you wanted me then to move to which?
Actually, no. I think it'd be better if we can just ask questions in relation to this one last question in our mind. So I have a question. Do you have the business paper there?
I do. Yes, I do.
So yeah, so at page 34, it's the second bottom paragraph. It says, a key aim of the local housing strategy was to determine long-term boundaries for our towns and villages to ensure we can manage urban sprawl and maintain the physical and visual separation between our towns and villages. Yarrowa Road was identified in the strategy as the long-term western edge of Mossvale, and the proposal is considered inconsistent with the aims of the strategies. One of the themes that echoes in, I guess, a lot of the general submissions is this idea of having green in between the villages and not having urban sprawl. So I just wondered if you could comment on that statement.
Oh, most definitely. Well, the reason for having that that screenshot of the streetscape is that having this site in its own right, there's green to the south of that. So even in the plan that sits on page 34, you see that the green is sitting to the south of that site. So what this is a fantastic opportunity to do is actually transition between the green in a meaningful and more appropriate way than the back fence. So we're not talking about a large extent of Yarrowa Road in terms of frontage, but equally though, the eastern side, so the Yarrowa Road is actually going to be quite lopsided in terms of its approach into Mossvale. And particularly from the Mossvale Narrow Road intersection, or the Yarrowa Road, it's actually Yarrowa Road intersection that goes into Narrow Road. As you drive from that intersection north, you'll have standard residential urban on the right-hand side. You'll have green between on the left-hand side, and then that, as it stands now, you have that rear fence interface on the western side. So I think it's more appropriate for the fact that there's only a small section of that western side of Yarrowa Road, that it's developed in a meaningful way that means you can actually transition from the green between into urban areas. At the moment, it's a fixed, hard and highly unattractive visual entry into Mossvale.
Okay, Linda, did you have any questions?
No, thank you, Julie.
Larissa?
No questions.
Bill?
No, Julie, no questions.
Okay, thank you. All right, so Mr. McAndrew, if we could move on to 181 Drapers Road, Colovale.
Okay, so 181 Drapers Road is a site that sits to the south of Colovale. So this is the extract from the, so hopefully you can still see my screen, but extract from the, you can see that, Jill?
Yep.
Yeah, so this is an extract from the report that was prepared for council for the panel for meeting. 181 Drapers Road is this site here. It was identified as one of the sites as a consequence of the council determination to review the local housing strategy and the local strategic planning statement back in August of 2020. This site is 20 hectares in size, 26 hectares in size, I should say. So I'll just go to the next slide. So it has been identified for the opportunity for development. I just note that the panel report recommends that it not be included in the local housing strategy. The site is eminently suitable for development. It's cleared, majority cleared. It's only 3 kilometres from Colovale. It also provides good access, or has good access into the Braemar industrial area and the area north of Mittagong, as well as good connection out to the motorway and north and southbound interchange at that location. We noticed that the local housing strategy obviously goes about to identify where houses or housing should occur and to meet demand. And I reiterate my point from earlier about the fact that the demand metrics are way out of date in relation to what is relevant to today. But the thing that we're focusing on is actually a broader mix of land use activity. So larger lot residential as opposed to standard residential, sort of peri-urban and rural residential style development for the site. As part of the report that was put forward and exhibited, there was some consideration for some environmental and bushfire considerations on issues on the site. They've been reviewed. I expect that they would be reviewed as part of a planning proposal coming forward for rezoning, but the site is unencumbered in terms of those activities. Bushfire was considered to be one. The bushfire mapping that's being used in the data sets is out of date. So hence it's going to skew any picture of what is or isn't bushfire affected. So as part of the submission, we put forward a structure plan to illustrate the imminent suitability of this site. It's unfortunate that you, as panel members, weren't able to go out on site, and if you're not familiar with the area, it's a bit more difficult to understand the nature of this area. But fundamentally, what's important about Coalvale, and obviously be presenting on another item after this in relation to Coalvale. Coalvale provides a fantastic opportunity for the growth of the Shire without impacting.
I don't know if you heard that, Mr. McAndrew, that's 3 minutes. So if you could just, maybe I'll give you another minute. Yeah.
Sure. But Coalvale, so this is sort of fundamental to the local housing strategy, and that Coalvale provides, and I noticed that Viv May has acknowledged that growth in the north of the Shire hasn't been sort of registered as much as south of the Shire. Coalvale provides a fantastic opportunity for maintaining and sustaining growth in the Shire without impacting the balance of the Shire in terms of traffic and impacts on livability. So last slide for this is that this site is eminently suitable. It has the ability to be serviced. It has the ability to provide housing to the Wingecarribee in a way that is unique to the Wingecarribee, and meeting what is the vernacular of development within the Wingecarribee. So site being eminently suitable. The structure plan, if you could have a review of that in your consideration, because it does actually put in context, funny enough, all of the other submissions that were received in the recent exhibition to state how this area can sustain a substantial amount of development. Bushfires being, as I said, touted as the issue. Bushfire could be managed.
That's 1 minute.
Okay, so thank you. Linda, did you have any questions?
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
Larissa?
No questions. No questions.
Bill? Are you there, Bill?
Sorry.
Did you have any questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I didn't have any questions. Okay, so the next item is also in Coalvale, 1530 Wilson Drive.
So this is the site on the northern side of Coalvale. So back to the plan that I had up earlier. This is the site here. If you can see my handprint. Just a little bit back in history, the council meeting of the 12th of August, so this relates to the previous item as well. It was expressly put by the councillors at the time that the Wensleydale proposal that was put forward by the local housing strategy should not be included in the local housing strategy. So quite a bold and important consideration in terms of the council not wanting Wensleydale to be developed. So as a consequence of that, there was 2 sites identified. One was Drapers Road in the south. The second was the site on Wilson Drive in the north. A third site came in, which is Wattle Street, but whichever the way, it's important that all these sites be identified for future living areas, given what I was stating before about the mismatch with the metrics in terms of the population growth. The site, just some metrics around that, 78 hectares, predominantly cleared, located close to the Coalvale town centre, has good access to Wilson Drive, has good access to the motorway for access into the CBD of Sydney, the Aerotropolis and the Western Sydney Airport that's emerging, coming out of the ground at a rapid rate of knots. And it's once again back to that point that it makes it ideal, given that it's in the north of the Shire, that it will not encumber the balance of the towns and villages of the Shire in terms of increasing traffic problems. It's identified that there is an insufficient availability of residential land within Coalvale. This opportunity provides between 400 to 500 dwellings in this location, so it's certainly a decent amount of land supply for Coalvale. The Drapers Road site has the capability of delivering between sort of 80 to 100 odd houses on that site, so more than enough supply. The Wensleydale property has a heritage item on that, which in my experience and my professional opinion has not only local, state, but also international significance, given the owners of the property over the period that it's been there, namely the Hordens and Mick Fleetwood. So back to the site on Wilson Drive. It doesn't have any heritage issues, minimal bushfire risk. Biodiversity is able to be managed. Drainage and water quality are all part of a modern development, so that can be managed. Its proximity to employment areas within the Mittagong area and within the balance of the Shire is quite close, as well as to areas north. It's able to be accessed or it's able to be serviced, I should say, by electricity, water, sewer.
Okay, so that's 3 minutes. If you could, I'll give you 1 more minute. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. And then site constraints that are very minimal, can be managed as part of a rezoning process. Just a slide of the indicative layout to demonstrate that the site has capability of being able to provide a mix of lots. So it's not just standard residential, but there is some larger lots there to buffer against the edge of the property and also to take into account its interface with Coal Vale. So I think overall, to conclude, I think as a resident and ratepayer of the Shire, I think it's important that as panel members that we don't kill the golden goose, which is the Wingecarribee and the benefit that the Wingecarribee has. So the nominated sites by the landowners should be seriously considered as being realistic alternatives to what the local housing strategy is suggesting, in supplement to that, but concern about the Wensleydale property and that it should be investigated for its heritage capability before being identified for urban purposes.
Okay, thank you. So I had a question, just dealing with this site. You say it could produce 400 to 500 dwellings. Are you saying that you're proposing that because you don't think Wensleydale is likely to be a viable option, or are you saying this will be in addition to whatever might come out of Wensleydale?
What I'm saying, what I am saying is that this site has opportunity to be developed for urban purposes. I'm not saying that Wensleydale shouldn't be developed, but what I'm saying is that it should be the heritage aspects of the Wensleydale site. The homestead is equivalent to, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the homesteads of the Cumberland Plain, but Harrington Park Homestead, Maryland's Homestead, the Oran Park Homestead, Denby
Yes,
Homestead.
I've been to all of those.
Fantastic. I've been the urban designer on all of those. So I'm fully aware of the heritage considerations of heritage homesteads, Raby House as well. My concern is Wensleydale needs to be investigated from a heritage perspective first, urban second, not to identify it as urban capable without going through that process first. So these are sites that will be needed incidental of Wensleydale. I mean, when you go back to my comments about population, Profile ID says, used by a number of local authorities around Australia, Wingecarribee is at 51,760 residents today. Well, more today because that was June 2020 figures. That's a growth rate at 2% for the 4 years prior from the 2016 census data. If you project that forward, we're talking about a population of 60,000 people. We're going to need all of these sites to sustain development to the growth that's been, particularly the growth that's been experienced, and the pandemic has just exacerbated that. So the issue of balancing between supply, housing, affordability, the Wingecarribee will become unaffordable for most local residents, for their children to be able to live in place and grow in place.
Okay, did anyone else have any questions? Linda?
I just was just going to build on what you were talking about, Julie, just be interested in what Nigel had to say. The housing strategy has identified certain areas, as you know, that the council staff think will be sufficient to meet the housing needs for the life of the plan. And are you suggesting, and it sounds like you are, that is not going to be sufficient and that we should be identifying further sites for investigation in the future, as well as the Wensleydale site?
Most definitely, Linda. And identifying a new living site doesn't mean it gets developed. Wensleydale's been identified for well over 15 years as a development site. Nothing's happened. So what you're actually observing and what you're deliberating on today is landowner nominated sites where there's a willingness to develop. So there's a certainty that the development will come about, not a certainty in terms of a desire from landowners to see land developed. Doesn't mean that it does get developed because of going through a rezoning process, but it's the one thing that the objective analysis that was undertaken as part of the local housing strategy failed to use and could not use as a criteria of search, and that is landowner willingness. By ignoring all of the community consultation responses by landowners is ignoring the ability to deliver housing for the Shire. So you've got a situation where a local housing strategy done by GIS computer software analysis doesn't give you an understanding of whether there is a desire to develop, and being able to give certainty that your local housing strategy can actually deliver housing.
Thank you.
And I just referenced that with a situation in Penrith, where Penrith actually put out as part of their, I'm not sure whether you're familiar with it, but they had an expression of interest for people interested in developing because they acknowledged that they had a growth problem and they didn't have enough land. So that's resulted in two areas, Glenmore Park South, or Glenmore Park 3 and Orchard Hills North, as two areas that are now advancing through rezoning as a consequence of the Shire or the Penrith City Council acknowledging that they need to understand what the desire is from landowners to develop, to be able to actually then fulfil their obligation on their requirement to deliver housing.
Larissa, did you have any questions?
Yes, can I just ask you, I know you mentioned some current figures in terms of population growth in the Shire. Where are they from? Sort of like 50.
If you reference Profile ID, it's a data house that works for a number of local authorities. Camden Council uses it as a source of data. That states clearly that Wingecarribee is a 51,760 population as of June 2020. Now the problem we've got is all of our statistical data relies on the 2016 census. Of course, we've got a new census year this year, but the last 5 years, I mean, and obviously they're working on population calculations as they do, but it's a reputable sort of basis for information, and it's clearly stating that we've grown. The Shire has grown far greater than what the projected rate at 0.2% that the local housing strategy is suggesting. So we are coming under pressure. I mean, I can go on for quite some time about the fact that the Shire is under growth pressure, but I draw your attention to the 23rd of June's meeting with May, clearly stated in his report that he, and it would be worth referencing or having a look at that he is questioning why the Shire is linked down to Canberra in terms of its growth and the regional strategy. And this is the problem for the Wingecarribee, is it sits in the northeast of the Tablelands regional strategy, the southeastern region, Tablelands regional strategy. So it's in the far-flung northeast of that strategy. It's outside the metropolitan strategy of Sydney, although immediately adjacent, and it's outside the Illawarra, immediately to the west. The Wingecarribee is, coming under price pressures. Houses are staying. I mean, a house up the road from us was on the market for 1 day. These are pressures that the Shire can't sustain without sufficient supply to keep housing prices down and affordable for key workers, hospital staff, police, ambulance, fire. All of these people won't be able to live in the Shire because affordability is just going way through the roof.
Did you have any questions? No. Bill, did you have any questions? I'll take that as a no. I just thought I might mention, I thought we might just have a short 5-minute break at 11 o'clock. It's because we've been going for an hour. All right, so the next speaker I have, so I take it Michael Brown never came back to us? Is Michael Brown there?
There we are.
Oh, hello. How are you?
Sorry, Madam Chair, I pushed the wrong button on this.
Oh, we've all been there.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're speaking about Darrowby Lodge, Mossvale.
Correct, yes.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I have my client here with me. It was Mr. Marshall. I'm not quite sure. Come in. That's it. Mr. Marshall owns a property with his wife, Wendy. We have been on this journey for this property for about 8 years now, and we had an approval in principle last year in October from council to identify, the council's identified this land as future residential, and they've identified that this land can be rezoned, but the issue was that we had to get obviously on the housing strategy for a start, and secondly that we need to have the sewer connection is the issue. Now, we've been dealing with Michael Park in the strategic planning section for a while now, and my last discussion with Michael was that we can get the sewer to the council disposal site, but from there's no capacity to treat the sewer. We believe what we've been told in recent documentation is that the council's approach to get sewer on, or get a fund for it, a grant of $14 million to do the work, and that work should start sometime, I believe, this year and hopefully finish June of 2022. What we're after, I suppose, is if the committee, or the panel should say, Madam Chair, would recommend that this land be considered in the housing strategy, and that we can move forward with the planning proposal that we've lodged with council, and so we can get that moving and hopefully get this land rezoned for residential purposes. I think you believe you went out there for a meeting, or sorry, a site inspection yesterday, so you would have seen that the property next door is all being developed now for residential housing. And we're just looking at the next part of the land to be developed for the same purpose.
Actually, so is that, have you finished?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, sure. Sorry, I thought I had it on silent. That's it. Sorry. I'm not quite sure what else.
I'm not saying you have to say. I was just going to say, we didn't actually go to the site yesterday because of the COVID-19 health orders. But we were shown it through a number of visual aids. I've certainly been in the vicinity of it through one of my other panel meetings. Can I just ask the council staff, is this site number 13 on page 39? Is it Illawarra Highway?
No, it's 48. It's on page 48. It's Darrowby Lodge.
Julie, so this is one of the identified new living areas in the strategy, and the recommendation of staff is that it be retained in the strategy.
Oh, okay. So yeah, so Mr. Brown, the staff are saying that this should stay in the strategy. So it's not recommended to be taken out. So I mean, it will obviously still be subject to a planning proposal and all of the things set out in the report. Okay.
Yeah, we've lodged the planning proposal a while back, Madam Chair, and we've done all the studies like the flora and fauna and heritage.
Yes. Yeah. So you're just waiting for the housing strategy to actually get sent to the Department of Planning and be endorsed. Yeah. Okay. All right. I don't have any questions. Did anyone else have any questions? Linda, Larissa, Bill?
No.
No. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Brown. I'm glad you were able to join us.
Thank you.
Okay, Seven. Thank you. The next speaker I have is Sophie Perry again on Colo Vale South. Are you there, Sophie? Oh, thank you. And Craig Cameron. So you're both representing the landowner, or? Sophie? Yeah, perhaps if you go first, Sophie. Yeah.
Sure, I just realized I was doing that thing with being muted. Yeah, so you're right. Cardno is the technical consultant on behalf of the landowners, and Craig is one of the landowners representing the landowners group. So I may take 4 minutes, Craig may take 2. That's the running schedule at the moment. So Michelle, if you could please go to the next slide. So as you know, Cola Vale South is already, well, in the most recent version of the local housing strategy. The merits include the list there, which is a moderate increase in the village population, the potential for a neighbourhood centre, improved local services, and hitting that target of 20% of all new dwellings being medium density or small lot. Council's concerns are limitations to transport and capacity of services. One of the things about limitations to transport is this site is actually right in the village. So we're not actually looking at generating a lot of new trips. What we're actually planning on doing is facilitating some more walking and cycling trips. So Michelle, if I could go to the next slide, please. So the advantage of this Cola Vale South site in particular is it stands out because it's got a lot of advantages for the existing village, not just for this land area itself. So if you see the blue shaded edge on the western edge of the site, that will be investigated for a permanent fire break. So something that Cola Vale is really missing and really, really needs. We need a defensible space that the approach of the bushfire is most likely going to be from the west or the southwest. If we can get a defensible space in there, we're doing wonders for protecting the safety of the rest of the village. The rest of the development could include small cottages, small duplexes, but right on this corner here, near the school and the park, is a perfect little hub for some small retail, for some live work premises. So ground floor, mixed use building or work from home building, and just a little cluster of development there where it wouldn't change, but it would enhance the existing patterns of the way the people in the village move around and use the site. And we thought right on that corner there is also a good opportunity for a streetscape upgrade where we get a little bit of a plaza happening where people can come and meet and have outdoor eating areas, maybe some public art, something like that. But yeah, this particular site really represents a great way to bring other uses and a diversity of housing that actually integrates really well with the existing village. It's actually the one site in Cola Vale as well that gained the most supportive submissions in the exhibition process. Michelle, if you could go to the next slide, please. So we know from our studies initially, we've been working with the landowners for over a year, that we'll need to do these specialist studies for the planning proposal. And we're well aware of these constraints already, and we've done a bit of initial investigation into them. One thing I would also like to say though, it has the most diverse range of benefits for the existing village. It can be integrated with the existing village, and it's really important that there's something that's actually part of the existing village, because I have experience of other regional and small village areas in rural locations where if you put in a new development that's a little bit further away from the center of the village, it can create an us and them type of sense of space. Whereas this particular site has really good potential to just bring a lot of advantages to the existing village. So I might hand over to Craig, who can tell you from a landowner's perspective.
Okay, just before you do that, can you tell me which landowner site this is in the council officer report? Do you?
Cola Vale South, it's referred to.
So what number?
Oh, I don't have the.
Julie, it's on page 61.
Living areas.
Oh,
One of the living areas put in the most recent amendments to the strategy.
Oh, 61. Okay, thank you. Yep.
Craig?
Okay. Yep.
Good morning. Hi, guys. Everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep, very good. I'm good chatting, right, but I'm not real good looking at a screen, and this all is quite uncomfortable for me. So I'd just like to thank you, Sophie, for your time and thank the panel for the opportunity. I'll be as quick as I possibly can, and I'll talk really, really quickly. Good morning, and I'm presenting on behalf of the group of 7 landholders in Wattle Street. I'm not a savvy out-of-town developer. I'm a simple family man that was born in the Southern Highlands, went to Bowral Primary School, Bowral High School, and then did my apprenticeship locally with the NRMA. I've been doing NRMA locally for 30 years, working in amongst our wonderful community. We've lived in Coalvale for 22 years, raising our family. My father and his mother lived in Coalvale in the 1950s in the same street we live in, and she spent time working as a station master / mistress at Coalvale train station. So we are very attached to Coalvale and love living here. I feel we are very in touch with our local community. For 15 plus years, my wife, Louise, and I have been in regular contact with the council requesting rezoning of our property. After years of being met with councils not interested in spot rezoning, or we want to see you put your produce up at the front gate with an honesty box, quote, instead of subdividing, we engaged 2 years ago with Cardno, and under their recommendation, approached our surrounding neighbours, and here we all are today. Nobody is more familiar with the village than the residents. Our group of 7 have lived in Coalvale collectively for more than 130 years. We've sent our children and grandchildren to Coalvale Primary School. We all work and or run businesses in the Southern Highlands. We know firsthand the bushfire threat. Some of us are part of the RFS and are well aware of what the village lacks. We also know that it offers great access to Sydney, Wollongong and ACT, and whilst living in a rural environment. In Council's Local Environment Plan 2010, Council stated none of the Wattle Street proposed property land owners are able to carry out any sustainable primary industry as a going concern. The blocks are simply too small to obtain any commercial economy, and Council goes on further to say it may have been adequate in the 70s and early 80s, but today is totally unviable. Our site immediately borders 1,000 square metre zonings. Our submission offers land that is not much good for anything else other than to provide a considered and measured increase in the dwelling numbers close to the school, the Central Park, pathways to the bus stops and our community hall. This will not materially add additional traffic as the new residents will walk to these locations. Not everyone in Australia wants to, in my opinion, live in tiny blocks of land where you could nearly sit on your toilet and reach up through the window at the same time and help clean your neighbour's roof gutters. Many still want a decent sized block of land to create the great Aussie dream of becoming a homeowner, something that's very non-achievable in the Southern Highlands, as there is little to no land being developed. Tiny blocks of land in huge developments isn't the solution, in my view, in the Southern Highlands, and this is certainly not our intention in our proposal. Now, Wensleydale, none of our group are aggressively opposed to Wensleydale, but just a few points. Wensleydale will bring traffic into Coalvale up to our site for schooling and Gert Park. How many dwellings are planned for Wensleydale? 500? I'm just guessing. What percentage of those families will be doing dangerous U-turns in 6 of our group's driveways, dropping off their children to the school, as Wensleydale is too far away for children to walk to school? Our site is walkable and will not create further congestion at the school. Wensleydale will fracture the existing Coalvale community. Wensleydale needs to be a community itself, not an extension of Coalvale. Our site will encourage community within the existing village of Coalvale. Wensleydale is a good location and we can understand it would be an attractive, very easy solution, an option for council, and will be well received by new and existing residents. However, Wensleydale will not be part of Coalvale and really should be considered as a new suburb, such as Bingara Gorge is in the Wilton area and how that's become. Our site really is in the heart of Coalvale. To conclude our comments regarding Wensleydale, that seems to be our main rival, in Council's Local Environment Plan 2010 2.2K, Council states they seek to protect areas of high scenic value landscape. Have you driven into Coalvale? Wensleydale is absolutely stunning and everything that living in a rural area should be. Our site offers land which has no scenic value whatsoever. One paragraph to go, guys. I'll talk quickly. We believe infilling all the insufficient and underutilised land offered within the current village is a sensible first step in seeing the village reach its full potential prior to introducing other new developments outside of the main village. Our site is well supported within the local Coalvale community, and our 7 property owners have indicated they intend to remain in Coalvale and will continue to work together to ensure that future developments will integrate sympathetically into our beautiful village. Therefore, our Wattle Street, the heart of Coalvale, is in good hands. My apologies if I've run over time. I've had to cram 15 years worth of dealing with Windsor Carriby Shire Council into a couple of minutes. Many thanks to the panel and to Sophie, and all you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Linda, do you have any questions?
Yeah, just one small point. Thank you very much, Craig. Obviously a very passionate local, great to hear. My question probably relates more to Sophie being able to answer it. You've pointed out that this land is in proximity to the town and various facilities. I just wondered if you could quickly tell me what you consider to be council's main objection to this site, other than what's stated in the report, that it wasn't identified through their strategic process.
Yeah, I'm actually at a bit of a loss. It really represents some really good opportunities for the whole village. I know the concerns were the transport limitations, but as I said, a lot of trips with this development in place with some really nice cycle and walking pathways will actually be replacing cars with walking and cycling. And services and utilities are definitely something that we can be investigated. And the scale of the development is such that it will bring enough development potential there to bring in extensions to existing services and utilities. So I'm really surprised, because this site was supported by more submissions than any other site in Cola Vale. And it really does stand to improve the village substantially.
Thank you.
Larissa, did you have any questions?
Yes. Can I just ask you roughly the size of the site in total?
I knew you were going to ask that question. Does Craig know? I don't know off the top of my head.
Doing the calculation as we speak, 36 acres.
Okay.
They're about 36 acres, seven lots at 5 acres. One of those lots is at 6 acres, Sophie.
Thank you, Craig.
Okay, and just in accordance, I know with your plan, you've got 2 sites that sit a little bit outside the consolidated kind of area where you've got your 5 sites. Other than creating what you kind of say a bushfire wall or a kind of perimeter, how would you treat those 2 sites? Because they kind of fragment other sites to the west, or one, on the other side. How would you design with those 2 sites sitting outside a more consolidated site of the 5 kind of lots? Because it's a bit tricky, because you've got a house and property to the west. So, and then you've got the school, which is ideal, but, would that site really be, the site to the south be better off integrating with the school if the school ever had to expand or do something? So just a bit of a more detailed planning process with those 2 other sites that sit a little bit outside your boundary.
Yeah, I agree, Larissa. I think what we need to do is when we get to a planning proposal stage, provided we're supported in the local housing strategy, is that we look at those things and try and get a bit more synergy. At the moment, it's a very consolidated and very cooperative group of landowners. It's not to say that we can't maybe add those extra fragmented lots in, and we would work towards that, because I agree it would be a more comprehensive outcome for the development. So we would work towards that, understanding that at the moment, the way it's presented, it's fragmented, but there's definitely potential for manipulating those boundaries a little bit when we get a planning proposal in.
And Larissa and Sophie, if I can just add on that, some of that was actually done purely to on the size of those lots, because they were all around the 5 acre lots. And so it's all sort of made sense. Some of the others around there are larger than that. So it probably looks a bit unusual on a map looking at it, but when you walk around, it all gels together fairly well. But there's other 5 acre blocks on the northern side, Kawana Place, there, that could possibly be, if council were looking for additional land, of 5 acre lots that could be gelled in there as well, to make it more of a, I see what you mean, more of a ball shape, a round shape.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks for your time, Larissa, and thanks for your compliment, Linda, I should say. Yeah, definitely passionate. We've been here for a long. I get choked up. We've been here for a long time. Cola Vale's been wonderful to us, and we want to stay here and continue to live here. And it's just, it was very disappointing to think that what we thought was an absolute no-brainer for benefit for the village and more people to come to the village and enjoy what we've got here, to not to be supported. We were stunned. But yeah, thank you very much.
Sorry, could I just ask a question? How many dwellings do you think that you would get out of this proposal?
At the moment, conservatively, I would say about 40 to 50, but we haven't actually done a specific layout yet.
And that's because they're larger lots?
Yeah, we would have a transition of larger lots with bigger asset protection zones around the fringe, but then we would gain density by having that neighbourhood hub surrounding the mix of shops and live work houses.
Okay. All right, thank you. Bill, did you have any questions?
No questions, Julie.
Okay, all right. So I think that might be, yeah, it's just almost 11 o'clock. So I think we need to have a 5-minute break. Everyone agrees on that? Okay, well, we'll see you all back here at just after 11. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Michael, are we waiting on anyone?
No, I think it looks like everyone's back in, so yeah.
Okay. All right. So I think the next person I had, it said was actually going to be in person there, Lawrence Peters.
Yes, he's here with us.
Oh, okay. So that was 241 Drapers Road, Coloval. Are you ready to proceed, Mr. Peters?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I proceed? Yes.
Yep.
Good morning, Madam Chairman, members of the panel and staff members of Windsor Shire Council. My name is Lawrence Peters and I'm the Director of Hammerdark Proprietary Limited, the owner of the Pines at Lot 183 Drapers Road in Colourvales. The property was bought by the company in approximately 1988. It adjoins the property that Nigel McAndrew was speaking of earlier to you. So that property is on the northern side of my property and has all the attributes of the property as he discussed. Mr. Scott Lee, a town planner, submitted to council by email on the 27th of November 2020 a request that the Pines, that's the name of the property, to be included in the identify area site 2 Colourvale South Potential Long-Term Investigation Area, and that if the Pines was included in the selected sites, then a full range of environmental reports would be submitted. However, in that report, figures 11 and 12 indicate that the pine is, inverted commas, most suitable. The advantages of the pines that have to be considered is its proximity to Mittagong. It's 4 kilometres, not in the mine subsidence area or affected by mines activity. 2 sealed roads to the M5, terrain most suitable for housing sites. The eastern portion is gently sloping land. The western portion, now I'm talking about Drapers Road subdivides this property. The western portion is rugged with sandstone outcrops that add to the creation of individual and perhaps larger home sites. Suburbs like Bonnet Bay in the southern shire of Sydney is similar in terrain. Stormwater drainage to Sheepwash Creek, which is on the southern side of the property, will not interfere with any other properties. Mobile tower already exists at the bridge crossing of the M5. Most of the land on the eastern portion will lend itself to building methods of concrete slab constructions, which is the modern method of the which is normally used in sites such as East Bow and so forth. We say that it's a sheltered, sunny position with access to state forest, a creek and a waterfall. Marvellous bushwalks and play areas that already exist. The faults, the property is not suitable for grazing, cattle to fatten.
That's 3 minutes.
Thank you. If you could finish up, Mr. Peters. Yeah.
Wow, I'm dismissed very quickly, aren't I?
I'll give you another minute. Yeah.
Oh, I'll go now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Linda, did you have any questions?
May I just say, this is just typical of what and how quickly I'm dismissed. Thank you. Yeah.
Did you have any questions, Linda? Larissa? Bill?
No questions, Julie.
Thank you. Mr. Peters, sorry, before you go, Mr. Peters, I had a question.
Yes.
So in the council officer's report at page 6, it says that what the council's housing strategy is trying to do in the centres of which Colourvale is an identified one in this, or potentially in the strategy, is smaller lots, and this is proposing a larger lots. And it says the Shire has a significant supply of existing larger lots, this is not something that the housing strategy has identified. So I'm just wondering if you could comment on that.
No idea.
Okay.
No idea that this is a housing strategy, I was informed.
Yes.
And larger lots, to my way of thinking, will not satisfy the needs of the coming population at the moment. They can't simply afford it. If we talk about 5-acre lots, they restrict, you may only run 1 or 2 horses on a 5-acre lot, and the rest of it is pretty much useless. My land is not in any way, shape or form suitable for cultivation. It is simply sits there and would be marvellous for home sites. So in other words, on the western side of the property, it probably is not suitable for anything other than scenic area. On the eastern side of the property, it's marvellous, and it's, yeah, very pretty, very protected, very sunny area. So I hope that answers your questions.
Okay, thank you. Yes. So Bill, you didn't have any questions?
No, Julie, no.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Peters. Thank you for coming in person. I know how difficult sometimes the technology can be for me.
Thank you for my very limited time.
Thank you. So the next speaker we have is Simon Picat for 73 Mary Street, Mittagong. Are you there, Simon? Simon, we're ready to hear from you. Have you taken yourself off mute? Simon, can you hear me? It says connecting.
Yes.
Oh, there you go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Yeah. So Simon, you're talking about 73 Mary Street, Mittagong. Yeah, which I think is site number 9.
Is it? Okay. I think it's the property in front of site number 9. Site number 9 was that large, I don't know, let's say 200-acre parcel. This is just a small 7,000 square metre parcel located at 73 Mary Street.
Okay.
There's a presentation that I sent through. I'm not sure that it's maybe not. I can share my screen if that helps.
That would be great, yeah.
I'm just not very good at Zoom. All right. I'll just leave it at this one. So as you can see here, the property is located at 73 Mary Street. So it's, I guess you could say, on the edge of Mittagong and the edge of Renwick. So Renwick's over here to the northeast, and Mittagong is on the eastern side of the site. The property that we have here it's known as Huntington Lodge, so it's 7,500 square metres in size. It's been earmarked for rezoning many times through the numerous LEPs that have come through, but for whatever reason, it's never been actually rezoned. So the site currently contains scattered native and non-native vegetation with manicured lawns and gardens under the trees. Currently zoned R2 rural landscape, and it's got an existing improvement being Huntington Lodge, which contains 6 2-bedroom units, which are currently rented out as affordable housing. I'll just take you through to a site plan to give you a better idea of the land. I'll just take you through a few of the benefits of the site. So the land is all north facing on a north facing slope, which allows all the future dwellings to maximise on passive solar design, which will improve energy efficiency and reduce the carbon emissions associated with heating and cooling. So as I've probably described previously, the property is located directly adjacent to the long established residential area in Mittagong and the newly urbanised Renwick precincts. Given this, the road and footpath networks are already available to provide easy access through to Mittagong Town Centre via Colo Street and the Ultium Highway via Bongbong Road. So accessibility, so the property is located on the newly constructed Renwick cycle path, which goes around the perimeter of the land. I'll show you that in the pictures at the end. And it's also easily connected through to Mittagong, Moss Vale and Bowral through the bus route 811. With regard to infrastructure, given that all of the services are available in the street, sewer, water, power, gas, telecommunications and everything, at the street frontage, there'll be limited infrastructure augmentation required to deliver the additional lots. With regard to quality urban design, as you can see from the master plan, the site has a very long frontage to Mary Street, and a very narrow depth of only 37 metres. This will enable the land to be developed quite simply, without the requirement for battle axe lots, roads, rights of carriageway or anything like that, which will minimise the environmental impact of developing the land. And as I've touched on previously, it's a great infill development site, which certainly meets council's planning priority 1, of infill development with inappropriate locations. I'll just take you through a few site images. So as you see over here, this is Huntington Lodge. This is the existing apartment building, unit building on the site. On the bottom right-hand picture, you'll see the footpath that was constructed as part of the Renwick master plan that connects Mittagong to, Renwick to Mittagong.
Okay, so if you could just wrap up, thanks. Yep.
And these are just a few other images showing just the scattered trees on the land, which are a mixture of pine trees and other native trees, which could be, there's no bushfire impacts or anything like that.
So, Mr. Pickett, you're going to have to wrap it up.
Yeah, that's fine. That was basically all I had to say about the property. And over to you for any questions.
Thank you. Linda, did you have any questions?
Just a quick question to Simon. Have you put in a planning proposal before on this site or had discussions with council about development of this site?
Yeah, so Michael Park's very much aware of the land, and it was going to go to council as part of the planning proposal for the land behind it, being site 9 of the housing strategy. We haven't pushed a planning proposal or anything like that. We were more hoping the council would see the merit of the land, of the redevelopment of the land, the simplicity of it, and adopt the council's own planning proposal, and not a landowner initiated planning proposal. But we are, we're currently moving down that path of putting a planning proposal together for the land.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I just start? So I'm just trying to find where the site is in the report. Was this a landowner initiated proposal?
Yes.
I'll just clarify for you, Julie, just so you're aware of what happened. So this came in as a submission on the first exhibition and not the 2 most recent exhibitions.
Right.
The resolution, the recommendation at the time, and this may ease some of the landowners' concerns, was that if provided the new living area to the east is developed, it will form a logical sort of infill development opportunity and can be considered as part of a planning proposal in the future. It doesn't need to necessarily be mapped as a new living area under the strategy, because it will form part of an infill development opportunity, subject to that new living area on the east being developed.
Oh, okay. So that's why it's not dealt with in the report. It
didn't come through in the 2 most recent exhibitions. It wasn't resubmitted as such. So it's not addressed in the report, because we only addressed the 2 most recent exhibitions in the report for the panel.
All right. Thank you. So Larissa, did you have any questions?
No, no questions.
Bill?
Sorry, he said no. I had him on mute. Sorry.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Well, thank you, Simon. The next speaker is Dan Thompson from SLR Consulting, and I noticed there was quite an extensive written submission from SLR Consulting. So I guess what I'm mainly interested in is why you disagree with what the council officer's recommendation was, rather than taking us back through that presentation. But it's obviously your time, so you can tell us what you like. Okay, please proceed. Have you taken yourself off mute, Dan?
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Thank you.
Excellent. All right. I'm glad. I was nervous the IT might not work, but that's fantastic. No, thanks for the opportunity to speak. I'm Dan Thompson. I'm the planning manager at SLR, and I'm speaking on behalf of Cavi Developments. They're the landowners of 9 Howards Way, Welby. That's site 8 of the landowner nominated sites in the report. So I'm just going to talk to 2 key items. The first is lack of identified residential lots in the northern portion of the site, or the Shire, sorry, and then the merits of the site and key differentiators with this site. So in terms of lack of supply, there's 40 lots identified by the strategy in Mittagong, and that's potentially less than that. If you look to the northeast of that identified land, the lots in Renwick are quite large, so there could be less than 40. There are also 500 lots identified in Colo Vale, or 500 dwellings. These are generally constrained bushfire ecology, lack of community services and amenity. And furthermore, these sites, based on council's own analysis, were identified as least suitable in the strategy, or primarily least suitable, which makes their inclusion questionable. In terms of the merits of the site's located on the western side of Mittagong, accessed via the Old Hume Highway, close to services within Mittagong, and transport infrastructure gives it ready access to Western Sydney, where a lot of these future people would be working. The site was included in the strategy's suitability analysis criteria as most suitable. I do note that the site constraints in the agenda pack for site 8, figure 18, they look comprehensive, and they're overstated with that based on bushfire buffering. We've undertaken bushfire analysis, and these are reduced significantly, and that's while retaining vegetation. The only vegetation being removed by this scheme would be paddock grass, and we'd be revegetating the riparian corridor to the south, which is adjacent to the Jibbagunya Reserve. We accept parts of the site are visible from Mittagong, and we've undertaken visual analysis, and essentially that identifies that land to the south or below the 660-metre contour, which is where the existing dwelling and driveway is not visible from Mittagong. We've met with council, and we've prepared a revised scheme based on that discussion and our analysis, and that's been provided to you. And that shows that the land on the higher ground above 660 is just one primary lot with the existing dwelling of 11 hectares. And that retains the buffering and retains the rural vista. Lots encroaching on the 655-metre contour are proposed to have a 5-metre height limit. And this is to ensure that dwellings don't impact on that 660-metre contour, which again would make them visible from Mittagong. The scheme includes extensive landscaping along the Old Hume Highway frontage and 1,000-metre square lots around the perimeter. And the idea being there's plenty of space for planting and open space to create a soft interface with the surrounds. Cavi Developments, they're flexible in the development approach and keen to incorporate a range of lot sizes, but also product offerings. We're happy to include housing solely for seniors in parts with associated community facilities, as well as build-to-rent products.
Okay, so that's 3 minutes. If you could perhaps wrap it up, yeah.
Yep. Essentially, these arrangements will create an affordable housing options, which the Shire lacks, in ready proximity to services and amenity. Thank you.
Okay, I'll just wait there for questions. Linda, did you have any questions?
I just would like to hear what Dan has to say about, or just his comment that, yes, the land was identified in the council report as highly suitable and suitably located, but it concludes that it's not needed for housing within the strategy. Do you have a comment about why this site is more suitable to be included in the strategy than perhaps others, or should it be in addition to others?
No, thanks, Linda. It's got close proximity to services. In terms of lead-in infrastructure, it's limited. It's already got a lot of water and sewer close by. there's the opportunity and the willingness by Cavi to include a range of lot sizes, and also to retain, which I think is probably the primary issue raised, to retain that visual landscape on the higher ground. So a combination of readily serviceable and the willingness to provide a different product on the site to what a lot of these sites would provide are some of the key aspects, I think, that make this appealing to include.
Larissa?
Yes, just a couple of questions. So one of the issues with this site was the visibility from certain focal points of the town, of Mittagong. How would you look at reducing that visibility through design potentially in the future? Like, what would you consider to limit, you know, the visual aspect of, you know, some development if it happened on that site, for example?
Yeah, we've undertaken visual analysis from all the key viewpoints in the area looking to the site, and that's what's led to the open space on the higher ground. So anything, I'm not sure if you had a chance to, if any of you are familiar with the site, but looking from the Hume Highway, you can see the dwelling and the access road. Everything below there would be, or everything above there would be retained as existing. We'd have landscaping along the frontage, and when you look into the site, you'd have landscaping, the entry, and that entry would terminate in a rural vista of the hill, the paddocks at the lower ground, and then the trees on the high ground. So while you will realise there's development in there, it's not going to impact on that, on the in between, that rural in between, and it's consistent, or probably more. It'll be more vegetated than the land on the other side of the road in Welby itself. So we don't think it's going to change the character of the area.
Yeah, and just two other kind of quick points is I know you've got a kind of concept plan for it. How many lots would it accommodate? Looks like quite a few hundred or something like that, is it?
It would be sort of 150 plus. It really does depend on the scheme we go for. If we include some seniors, obviously they would have smaller lots potentially. If it was standard lots, they'd be slightly larger. But the idea is you have a 1,000 metre square lots around the blue on the concept plan, and that gives that area for open space and softening up the appearance.
Okay, and the only other issue was, I know that everybody mentions the seniors housing, and it's obviously a big need in this area. The problem is a lot of these outlying villages or kind of on the edges of the town centres are a little bit removed from the services and the shops, and my concern is kind of accessibility. So in terms of this site, you know, are there bus stops? I know it's the old Hume Highway. I'm not familiar with what the bus and the access points are, but is there a regular bus service that takes you to Mittagong? I'm not too familiar with the set requirements, but I think you've got to be a certain, and this is not just your site, it's for a lot of these sites that landowners have designated. They've kind of said, oh, seniors, but when it comes down to designing around seniors, you often cannot satisfy the gradients, the accessibility, the points. You know, they really need to be very, very close to centres or, you know, town centre zones. And that's probably why a lot of the bigger sites are much better near Bowral, you know, near the key centres where accessibility is better. So just questioning in this one in terms of your accessibility from the.
Yeah, look, Larissa, we could include the seniors on the Hume Highway frontage where it will be close to bus stops, but the preference will be to push it further into the site because the grades are flatter. You've got ready access to the riparian corridor, and we're looking at putting a pathway through to Applegate Close. So there's a way to integrate that there. The reality is I don't think any of these sites really have 400 metre compliant grades that we're looking at as NLAs. So we're going to have to put in some sort of community bus. That's not not something that will be a problem, I don't think. It's more about on-site amenity with ready access in terms of transport. I think it'd be very ambitious to claim any of these sites could provide walkability for older people.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, that's all. Just wanted a bit more.
No, that's a fair point.
Cheers.
Bill, did you have any questions?
No questions, Julie.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Thompson. The next speaker is Jason Nash, speaking in respect of 11 to 13 Lemon Road, Robertson. Jason, I think you're on mute. Yeah.
Yep. Can you hear me and see me now?
Oh, we can, yes.
Great. When should I start?
Yes, if you can start now, yes.
Okay. Dear members of the planning panel, I'm Jason Nash and I represent the interests of my family on 11 to 13 Lemons Road, Robertson. We've been going up and down the mountain now for 6 generations. I wish I could tell you that the poor state of Robertson's urban fabric is a result of benign neglect. It is not. The neglect was willful, but there was an alternative vision. After years of community consultation and work by Council's own strategic planning team, the local housing strategy adopted in June 2020 signified that Robertson was to finally get a forward-looking planning framework. But then, in a late-night move on December 9, 2020, a one-sentence motion passed by Council sealed the town's fate. It was to be deleted from the local housing strategy entirely. No alternative plan was put in its place, not even empty pages, just more willful neglect. I pray that we can break this cruel cycle. While the population of Robertson has more than doubled since my youth, the infrastructure of the town, aside from the sewage network, has not kept pace. New developments have almost all followed the same urban pattern, the cul-de-sac, looking like cancerous polyps hanging off the town's flimsy road infrastructure. The need for better connectivity within the street framework is obvious. Addressing the out-of-date DCP is also needed. It is a cut and paste throwback to an era from before the sewage network. It favours the construction of yet more gin palaces on 2,000 square metres of land, and that will not solve the housing problem. And there is a problem, which is getting worse as more business is generated. The $51 million redevelopment of the Robertson Hotel is a case in point. No one asked the question, where will the employees live? Certainly not Robertson. Don't even ask about the fate of senior citizens. And then there is the question of retail. Robertson does not have a supermarket that can supply a resident's weekly shopping needs. Why? Because we do not have a population base sufficient for a supermarket operator to show interest. And so the weekly shopping drive to Moss Vale or Albion Park continues, identical to when I was a boy. However, like almost all in Robertson, I do not want to see the town's growth replicate that of the cookie-cutter rabbit hutch runs of Western Sydney. We can, through good urban design, do better than that. We can increase our population, provide housing for diverse socioeconomic groups, and get the services and retail we need to make the town ready for a carbon-neutral future in this age of climate crisis. I therefore call on the planning panel to reinstate the original version of the local housing strategy for Robertson, as adopted in June 2020, as a first step in this desperately needed process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I ask a question? So
Sure.
the housing strategy didn't include 11 to 13 Lemon Road, Robertson, and it's the recommendation is that Robertson go back in, or Robertson stay in, but that those properties not be included. But you represent those properties, or do you represent, are you speaking on behalf of everyone in Robertson? What?
No, I'm speaking on behalf of my family on 11 to 13 Lemons Road, Robertson, under the June 2020 and then the amended version, October 2020 plan. The Robertson was envisaged to have a northeastern extension long term. And then in December, although we found out after the consultation process, actually, that all of our properties had been removed. And there's very little we could do because if you're not notified in time, in fact, I believe the last consultation process was basically designed to ensure that nobody turned up, that everybody would simply agree to a particular course of policy, which I would characterize as willful neglect. And we've got to break that cycle.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah. So my understanding is your property is recommended to be put back into the strategy.
Okay.
But 1 to 9 Lemons Road is to be taken out. Is that correct?
Yeah, sorry, that was actually my mistake.
That's why I thought.
Yeah.
So
I don't know what the strategy is. I haven't seen it.
So the strategy is to and Michael, jump in if I'm incorrect, but my understanding is your property is to go in. However, the request for 1 to 9 Lemons Road, which are 5 parcels to the east, to the west of yours, is to be taken out. My question was, do you have an objection to 1 to 9 being incorporated in your lot? I mean, this is just we've made no decisions, but those parcels kind of sit comfortably and provide another point of access as well. So in terms of future development, it seems to me to make logical sense to include them, at least in the investigation, to get a more integrated development if one was to go ahead. But I just wanted your opinion, being the landowner, you know.
Well, I'm the son of the landowner.
Oh, sorry,
so
yeah.
It hasn't quite passed the 5th generation yet. We're still only up to generation 4 in terms of ownership. Look, when it comes to 1 to 9, we have no objections to them being included in any northeast extension of Robertson. And I believe that the original draft did not have them included. Then the adopted version in June 2020 did have them included. Overall, I think when it comes to connectivity, I think it's quite logical to have them included. Although I do want to say something. I think that it's really important to keep the street front of Lemons Road, to keep it as as it is at the moment. Do you know what I mean? It is a very unique location. I also think that it provides a good buffer to defend against excessive growth. We also have to remember that it represents the top part of the Mittagong Ridge line, which forms part of the catchment area for the Upper Nepean. And that's quite a sensitive water source, naturally. So we always have to consider these sorts of things.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Linda, you didn't have any?
No, I'm fine.
And Bill, did you have any questions?
No, Julie. No.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Sorry, Jason, I did get myself mixed up, but now I understand. So you're you're recommended to be in.
Yes, no, I have no objection to 1 to 9. I'm
okay.
More than happy.
All right, so we're up to our second last speaker now, Mark Turner, speaking about Northeast Robertson. Are you there, Mark?
Yes, I think I've clicked on the right buttons.
We can hear you.
Okay. Just double check on that.
We can't see you, but that's not critical, unless you were planning to share the screen and show us some things.
No, I can. If I can't get the camera going, I'll just speak to what I was going to say. Okay, you can hear me. That's the main thing. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Right. Yes, my name is Mark Turner. I represent the Robertson's Future Group for an age-friendly Robertson. We follow the principles of the World Health Organization as to what constitutes an age-friendly living environment, and hence our written submission came from that perspective. The submissions relating to Robertson are found on pages 97 to 101 of the Council report. We do note particularly that the submissions ROB 8 and ROB 9 illustrate well either end of the spectrum of community views in relation to the housing strategy. On the one hand, there is the view that nothing should change in Robertson and submits without any evidence that interest groups exist that have a secret agenda. This is a view frequently expressed by one of the members of the former council, but it's seemingly oblivious to the fact that change dictated by state government policies is inevitable. On the other hand, there is the, let's say, let it rip philosophy espoused in ROB 9. It would be surprising if there is much community support for that view. Most of the other submissions fall in between these extremes to a greater or lesser degree. Several submissions, and indeed the local housing strategy itself, well describe the problems that need to be addressed, such as lack of appropriate housing choices in the face of increasing population and a changing demographic, accessibility, social disconnection, and other issues But there are a few suggestions or specifics on how to deal with these problems on a practical level. Many of these ideas were discussed at council organised community meetings as far back as 2015, which supported a village precinct plan, but this was never translated into any meaningful action. Our group sees an urgent need for appropriate all-age friendly housing as detailed in our submission. Accessibility issues, footpaths, cycling paths, a town square, and other infrastructure on an infill basis go hand in hand with appropriate housing and services. Our group has held 2 community forums on such issues and invited a respected urban planner and an age-friendly community expert to discuss and illustrate what could be done to provide infill development suitable for all ages and at the same time preserving the village feel so many wish to retain. One such concept from Stephen Thorne was included in our submission to council. We do not support the northeastern housing development, which is prioritised over infill development, and we see this as a foot in the door to urban sprawl. But there is much that could be done within the old square mile of the village if we could progress the discussion to such issues as zoning, lot sizes, urban design, less confusing and ambivalent DCP, allocated funding and practical solutions, transport and infrastructure shortcomings. We do take heart from and are encouraged by the recent council initiative to seek community comment on Robertson becoming a pilot for a sustainability village. Such proactive assistance from council is needed and we hope can be encouraged by the planning panel.
Okay, I'll just have to ask you to wrap it up.
One more sentence?
One more sentence, yes.
Perhaps the planning panel could provide some guidance on how to take real action to achieve in the short term these objectives before state government mandates overtake us all and the ROB 9 submission gets its way. So thanks for listening. I'm sorry about the video.
Thank you. So I just had a question. So I understand that the Department of Planning refused to endorse an earlier version of the council's housing strategy because it only provided for infill development. It didn't provide for greenfields development as well. So I think that underpins why this strategy does include some greenfields development as well, including these sites in Robertson. Is your position that you think that it should be infill development only, or are you supportive of some greenfield development as well?
I think it's infill development prioritised over consideration of other developments. And I note the council was talking about the northeastern development being some years down the track and hadn't got very far in detailed planning. Basically what I'm saying is that based upon the submissions already made to council on pages 97 to 101, most of the community does not support extending beyond the current boundary. There was this welling of opinion within the community that we should try and retain some sort of village feel. How this is done is the question. And I think the infill development has to be prioritised, and perhaps down the track when pressures become too much, we can see how that can be integrated with development a little further afield. But there are genuine concerns within the community about expanding beyond the old square mile, particularly with the increased amount of tourism that's come through the town and the disruption that can cause. I don't know if there are any other questions I can address at this stage.
Yeah, no more from me. Linda, did you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions.
Larissa?
No questions.
Bill?
No questions at all. No.
All right, so that brings us, Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong, brings us to our last speaker.
That's correct.
Deborah Richards, who is speaking generally about the housing strategy. Are you there, Deborah? Linda, did you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions.
Larissa?
No.
Deborah, have you turned off the live stream?
Yes.
Oh, good. All right. Are you? We can't see you, but we can hear you. So if you're happy to proceed.
Why can't you see me?
Have you?
Hang on.
Have you got a red cross across?
Is that better?
There you go.
That's my anti-spy protection over the camera.
Okay. All right. Well, I was intrigued by your title.
My title.
Smart versus dumb growth and its relevance to the housing strategy.
Yeah. Look, I've actually just been listening to all the presentations and my brain is a little bit addled, and I don't know how you on the panel feel, but it's a lot to absorb. And I also was under the impression that it was a 5-minute presentation that I had. So I've been quickly trying to summarize what I want to say. But I think if you look overall at the strategy, when I read it, there's no actual vision there for what the future of the Shire should be as a place to live and a place to work. What aspirations are represented in this planning document? This is a very significant document. We've had huge growth over the last 20 years in this area, and already each of the towns, the main towns, Mittagong, Mossvale and Bowral, are choked with traffic. There's not enough parking, and they are, and everyone's complaining about it. My background, I'm a journalist. I moved here 20 years ago for family reasons, and I used to edit a local independent magazine, and it gave me a really comprehensive view of the Shire and people at all walks of life and the sense of what the community spirit is. I don't see that represented in this document. What I see is isolated tracts of land on the edge of existing towns and an awful lot of money at stake. And, you know, most of the speakers today have talked about the opportunities that releasing this land will provide. I hate to sound cynical, but what I see is an awful lot of opportunism. I've rewritten my presentation to try and bring it into 3 minutes. But basically I think there is no vision. This community went through a process in 2010 and it was endorsed in 2016. A huge amount of work to show what it's called Wingecarribee 2031, and it defined the aspirations of the area. That's not reflected in this document. I believe this document is out of date for 2 separate reasons. Well, 3 really. One, it's a legacy of the previous council, the planning processes which have been thoroughly discredited. And Mr. May is in the process of appointing a new head of planning. I think it reflects a lot of the poor decision-making and influenced decision-making of the previous council. Secondly, I think it's out of date because it's pre-COVID and the expectations were that the demographic change would be to senior people. We know that there's a huge demand now from young families and first home buyers, and therefore the demographics need review. And it's out of date also because one of the other things that Mr. May has commissioned, after recognising an incredibly poor relationship between council and the small business sector in the community, he commissioned a small business report. And if you look at recommendation 5 and 12 of that report, you'll see it has significant bearing on the kind of housing and the kind of development and growth that we should go through. Most significant is the recommendation that for every strategic plan in this district should be coordinated and take into account the considerations and needs of small business, in particular tourism. Nobody comes to this area to see roofs and clotheslines in a suburban sprawl. They come here because it has a European charm. It has enormous natural environment attractiveness, enormous heritage attractiveness, and it's rural. And they are the things that provide a character to the area that should be valued and cherished.
Okay, so if you could wrap it up.
Oh, I haven't even really started. But what I'd like to say to you is I think this strategy shows that it is dumb. It is a negative. It will cost us in terms of the attractiveness, livability of the area. Every house has 2 cars. There's nowhere in this strategy the accumulated amount of 6,000 extra cars trying to deliver their kids to school. And there is no consideration of a new satellite town, which could be actually an enhancement to the area. I could go on. I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, so Linda, did you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Larissa?
Just the satellite town, where would you see that occurring or happening, just out of curiosity?
Yeah. Okay, so I think as I say, I'm a journalist, I'm not a town planner, and I think it does need some serious research. I think you need to take into account the demographic changes, where the demand is. But I have several sites that I think would be appropriate, and you could actually utilise the M5 to try and relieve a lot of the congestion, commuter congestion and things off the local road infrastructure. As you will have seen in the previous strategic assessments, this area is constrained by a lot of things. A north-south railway line makes crossing across it very difficult. There's heritage, natural environment. It's flood prone. A lot of it is flood prone, and it's Sydney water catchment. That constrains development, but it could be seen as assets to guide us to a more sensible way. Now, I think, in my knowledge, there's 3 areas that I would recommend or think are worth scoping for a new town. And I think you could have a town like Poundbury in the UK, which was much criticised when it started and has proven its concept. It was beautifully designed, it has great livability, and it's become a tourist attraction in its own right. And to me, the existing strategy, as I say, is out of date, but it's also unimaginative. And I think this area deserves better. Everybody's fighting over nips and tucks of whether this is going to compromise the green between or not. Clearly, every time you expand the town boundary, you're compromising the green between. And you see evidence of it today. You know, they want it redrawn the other side of their particular land at Sutherland Park, and then you hear Scott Lee saying, oh, but then there's contiguous land further on just behind the Bong Bong Racecourse. This just won't stop. And at the moment, the towns are at break point. The sewerage, the Kumunji development on the edge of Mossvale, they can't sewer it. It's 1,250 lots. The first 170 lots, they're having to spray effluent over the adjoining paddocks and truck out the solids. Can you really approve that? I mean, the whole thing, it's actually inaccurate in the report you have there today. It talks in one part about excess capacity in the infrastructure. I think the experience, if you peel back not very hard, you'll find there is no excess capacity. The sewerage is at break point. They're going to have to spend $100 million to upgrade the sewers in the area to cope with just what the demand that there is at the moment. Another 67 million for water supply. The roads you can't build many more roads. They can't really be widened because of the constraints. There's a couple of bypasses, but basically you're dealing with a lovely area with a chain of towns and a chain of little villages. The Colo Vale South presentation before, I hadn't heard the detail of that. That's the kind of thing that I think does have merit because it embodies the spirit of community. These other developments with the suburbanisation of regional areas is a tragedy, and it would be a calculable loss to this area.
Bill, did you have any questions?
But just a comment, I thought that the presentation was very enlightening.
Oh, thank you very much, Bill. I'd love to be able to go into more detail. I mean, if you do decide today to defer this and ask for it to be redrawn, which I urge you most strenuously to do, for all the reasons I've given, I'd be very happy as a community person to take part because I am quite good at strategic thinking. And I don't think this is. I don't think this document is well integrated in its conceptual framework at all. And why kill this area? It's an asset. I mean, a forensic accountant would be able to put a value on the brand of this area. I did send you, I wrote out a thing which is too long for me to read, but you've all probably been given it. I asked for it to be tabled. There's a couple of links there. There was a lovely article just 2 days ago or 3 days ago in The Guardian about this Ruth Ritchie's frustration trying to go to the snowfields and being turned back. But her staging point on the way back from not being able to get to the ski fields was the Southern Highlands. And the way the Southern Highlands is described has an allure and a cachet that is the envy of any regional town around Australia. That is a valuable commodity that the tourism industry, I think, is right to want. The food industry here, we could be the Umbria of New South Wales. We could have a slow food movement here. There's absolute wonderful potential, but none of that is realised or recognised in this very meat and potatoes kind of strategy you have before you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Rich. I'm going to have to wrap it up now. It's actually midday, and what I was going to do was to ask Mr. Park to respond to those matters that he thinks are important to respond to, bearing in mind that we did have a very detailed briefing yesterday. And I was just proposing that we have another short break before Michael does that. What do the other panel members think about that? Or would you rather just go straight into it? What would you like to do, Michael? Would you like to have a short break before you do that?
Look, I'm happy either way, Julie. I certainly can wrap up Michael very quickly if you like.
Okay. All right. Well, let's just do that, and then we can move into the closed session to deliberate. Thank you, Deborah. Yeah.
Thank you. And there seems to be a level of confusion about what the strategy is, what it does, and what it isn't. I'd encourage Richards to have a look at the other document that was exhibited with the housing strategy, being the local strategic planning statement, which provides a more holistic vision, a land use vision for the Shire over the next 20 or so years. And it is directly informed by the other strategy that Mr. Richards spoke about, being the community strategic plan. And you look at a lot of the themes through both strategies are directly what the community have been telling us for the last 15 or 20 years. So the housing strategy shouldn't be read in isolation. It was about housing and not about food and other things. So I'd encourage you to have a look at that because I think it might address some of your concerns. It even flags the potential for a satellite town or village. The issue being there needs to be some form of catalyst. With the population growth we're expecting, the infrastructure costs will be significantly higher than some of the costs that you mentioned about adding on to our infrastructure. So there are some limitations, but certainly if there were a catalyst such as, and this is flagged in the local strategic planning statement, if there was a catalyst like a fast rail station, which has been potentially earmarked for the Highlands, then we would look at that. And they're the sorts of catalysts that could lead to a new town or village in the Shire. Some of the other points of confusion, I think the one that's probably the most important.
It's not a confusion.
Sorry, Ms. Richards, I'll just have to refer you back to my introductory comments. Once someone's spoken, they
I'm
don't
sorry.
get another chance.
I didn't realise I was still live.
If you could,
I'm sorry.
yeah, could you just put yourself on mute? Thank you. Yeah, please proceed, Mr. Park. Yeah.
Sorry. So one of the other contributions, not with Mr. Richard's comment, but with some of the other presentations, particularly around population forecasts, I think is really important to address. There are a whole range of different population forecasts and population figures that are used. I have raised some similar concerns with the state government population forecast for our Shire, where if you look at the current ERP, it's sort of getting up towards the high end of our forecast population. The state government have assured me, and we're talking about the state government demographers, have assured me that they are the numbers that we should be using, that they differ in terms of the starting point from some of the other forecasts, as well as the three different, and I won't go into detail about population forecasts because I'm not a demographer, but there are three different numbers that are regularly used. So the estimated resident population, the people counted on the night, and the enumerated count. They all present different numbers. I am assured by the Department of Planning that they are the forecasts we should use. What we have done in the housing strategy, and I think this is an important point to make, is that we have assumed, so we've used the planning forecast, which the department have told us to use. We've also used the high growth forecast, which is significantly higher than the planning forecast. And we've allowed enough housing through the strategy to in excess of what's needed over the next 20 years, even based on the high growth forecast. So we've actually over-planned for housing, and I think that's important so that we can manage growth in a way that's in keeping with the community's expectations. We don't want to under-plan for housing and lose control, but we want to have enough housing that if growth does happen faster than what's expected, we can still release land in a planned fashion. I also just want to quickly make the point is the housing strategy is a framework for how and where we're going to grow. There is a lot more work that needs to occur before land is rezoned to address a lot of the concerns that have been raised in the community today. So what are these areas going to look like? What are the housing types that are needed within these areas? Making sure we're ticking off on all of the other concerns in terms of constraints of individual sites or the characteristics of these areas moving forward. So this is a framework, and there is through the strategy we identified the next body of work that needs to occur so that we can manage growth in a way that's in keeping with our community's expectations and values. And again, these are things that we've been told through the community strategic planning process, through all of the consultation that certainly my team have done over the last handful of years as well.
Oh, is that it?
I'm happy to address a lot of the issues. I think that other point I'll make very quickly is we have seen today a lot of people sort of nominating, a lot of the representation from people who have nominated sites to be included in the strategies. Some of them have merit in their own right, others I think probably don't have merit. A lot of the land around Coalvale is heavily constrained, and I think that was largely glossed over today by some of the presentations. I think I see my role and my team's role is making sure that we avoid some of the issues we've seen over the last 2 years with bushfires and flooding. We've looked in detail at some of those things, and we've tried to put growth in areas that aren't going to put people in danger in the future. And I think that's a really important part of council's role in managing natural disasters into the future. It's not just about our response to disasters, but also how we make sure that we don't put people in those positions in the future. So that's what we've tried to achieve through the strategy. I'd also just comment on the process we've been through. The initial strategy was widely accepted, widely supported by the community. It was strongly endorsed by the Department of Planning about the evidence-based and objective process that we've been through to identify how and where our Shire would grow. I'm hoping that we can resolve some of the issues that have been brought up throughout the exhibition and provide greater certainty to the community in how and where the Shire will grow. We have set out from the start to build confidence in the decision-making processes of the council and to provide certainty to the community about where growth is going to occur, certainty to the industry so they can invest with a level of confidence based on a clear strategy of the council, and certainly to the council so that we know where growth is going to occur so that we can better plan for infrastructure. I don't think I need to go into any more detail. I'm happy to answer any questions, but certainly don't think I need to go into any more detail if you don't feel need.
Okay, so unless the other panel members have any objection, I'm actually proposing that we now close the public meeting and we're going to close session to deliberate. And then, as with the other panel meetings, I'll come back and announce our, in this case, it's advice, it's not a determination, and that will be live streamed. I just ask if Michelle could stay with us when everyone else leaves the meeting, apart from the panel members, so we can just discuss the minutes. Sure. Is that Linda and Larissa and Bill? Are you ready to do that now?
That's fine with me. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's fine.
All right. Thank you. Thank you,